We could talk about the bow angle of this. Maybe we talk about that save that for another day, because I think that's like
he's wearing the good colors again. That's all we need to say.
That's all we need to know. Back in the orange and blue, the NFL draft and our presence in it this year. I think, Austin, to be fair, to start off, we should talk about what our agenda is with this. We want to talk about who actually went where in the draft, but we also want to talk about the reality of, I think sometimes, what the NFL draft can tell you about the state of your program. I think that's a fair way to go about this. I don't want us just to be like, oh, they only talk about the good things. And there's a lot of good with this. We got to celebrate the people that have their opportunities. And Auburn is a big part of the reason that they're having these opportunities out there. So to start off with, did this draft go about how you thought it would for Auburn in terms of number of players, where they went selected? What are your just initial thoughts about that?
Yes, I thought that one or two of our guys might have shown up on Friday a little earlier than they ended up going on Saturday. But I didn't really expect much higher than Friday, 4th round-ish. And then we ended up mainly having all of our guys on Saturday. So it's about where I thought this group would be, primarily defensive guys. But, you know, I think that, like you said, it's incredible for these guys, no matter what they are getting, to live out a dream. They did hear their name called, and they are going to, you know, make an opportunity to be a professional football player. And I guess you can still call them, they're going to be a professional football player. Are they professional now? We'll debate.
I know that's another.
Don't
open that door. We'll open it in the next segment when we.
Well, that Pandora's box has already been opened there. Everybody's trying to stuff it back in. But anyway,
hey, listen, we didn't
do anything.
That wasn't us. That wasn't anybody here. That's all NCAA.
Are you saying it didn't have to be this way, Kyle?
It did not have to be this way. Don't start that one. Okay, focus.
But good for these guys. I'm really excited about a lot of where these guys ended up and the specific places for these specific guys. And you have a list, right, Kyle?
I do have a list for us. Yeah, we want to run through these and talk about these a little bit. We won't have time to spend time on detail on every single one of those, but let's first talk about the official draftees. I'm going to give them to you, and then we'll park it for a second and talk about them. Nehemiah Pritchett, 5th round, 136 overall. Jalen Simpson, 5th round, 164th overall. DJ James, 6th round, 192 overall. And very close together with these last two, Justin Rogers in the 7th round, 244, followed by Marcus Harris at 247 in the 7th round. So those are your draftees. I'll be honest with you, this is exactly who I thought would get drafted. I had an inkling of a hope that Gunnar Brenton, with the premium they put on offensive linemen, and rightfully so in the NFL,
for sure,
that he was going to get picked up as well. And he will talk about him in a second, but these are your guys. When I looked at the way they were drafted, to be completely honest with you, the first three, I literally would have interchanged a little bit.
Yeah.
And that was just my perception about it. But I think it goes to show you perception isn't always reality. DJ James was probably the bigger name out of the two cornerbacks, but he ends up going 3rd of all the Auburn players. Nehemiah Pritchett is your first one. Just goes to show you that just because your name may be bigger may not be necessarily what sells you the most to a team. And it's got to be a fit thing, right? Like, who is picking when, who's available before you, what you showed out in the combine. Credit goes to Nehemiah Pritchett for being the first one drafted this year. And, I would argue that DJ James was the guy that got talked about most on this team. And part of that's because DJ came over with a cool story, transferring over from Oregon as part of that kind of, people used to blockbuster deal, BOGOs. We get Justin Jones, Robbie Ashford, DJ. Yeah, well, it ended up okay for us, but we're not going there. Should we even talk about that part of it too? Maybe on the back end. Maybe in the back end. Anyway, that was my initial kind of intrigue of these drafts. Anything else about these draftees that you want to point out in particular?
Well, I love that DJ and Nehemiah are together. I think
so cool.
That's awesome. They're going to Seattle together. I think, like you said, I would have expected DJ to go first among the group. And so it is interesting that a guy in the same position goes to the same team around before him.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that they're together. I think they can both serve Auburn well. I always think of Nico Thorpe when I think of a
I
Seattle
do
defensive
too.
back with Auburn.
And Ben Obumanu. Ben Obumanu went there.
Yes, a receiver.
Yep.
And
Different.
then Trevon obviously went to Seattle as
Yep.
well. So I love that. I love those teams kind of having a history of picking Auburn guys. Jalen Simpson with the Colts, I think, is going to be a place he can really grab onto quickly. I see him being able to contribute there. And then I really got to be honest with you, and I'm not a huge national NFL guy. I have my own team that I'm good with, but Marcus Harris and the Texans, I think, is a place. I also thought Marcus Harris would go a lot higher than he did.
I did too.
I thought that he had put on enough tape and enough stats to be able to prove that. And I think in-game stuff. I'm no NFL GM. I'm no NFL scout. I just think the stuff you do in-game is probably what matters most to me. And so I thought he should have gone higher, but I think the Texans are a young team with a lot of energy and excitement that I think he can find a way in there in that rotation quickly. I know it's 7th round. I know it's very late and those guys don't always get to make the cut, but I'm excited to see where these guys get to go and where their careers take them.
And here's the thing too. Whether we're talking about draft picks, where you are in the draft, whether we're talking about stars and recruiting, it just goes to show you, and I'll give you an example right here. Who was, he lost the Super Bowl, but who was the starting quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers this past year in the Super Bowl?
Mr. Irrelevant.
Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick in whatever draft he was in, Brock Purdy. So it just goes to show you that if you continue to work hard, if you continue to put yourself out there and you find the right fit, great things can happen for you. Now, of course, I'm sure he wanted to win the Super Bowl. Who doesn't? But he got there. Mr. Irrelevant was clearly relevant. So whether you're a Marcus Harris, a Justin Jones who are in the final round, or any of these guys, because let's be honest, it's not, in terms of perception, the best draft overall in terms of numbers for Auburn, but it's still something to celebrate. And so congratulations to all these guys. Like you said, love the Seattle element to this as well. They're clearly pulling the Tampa Bay card of getting multiple Auburn players, but especially DBs as well. They're starting to catch on. There may be something going on there. For the rest of the crew that we have accrued just far, there may be some after that we're not aware of at the time of this recording, but this is the list that we have that have either free agent deals or mini camp invites. You've got Gunnar Brenton, who we just mentioned, going to Buffalo. Cam Stutz going to Baltimore. Avery Jones to Tampa Bay, and then 2 mini camp invites. Messiah Nasili Kite going to, I think it's San Francisco. I had that written down wrong. And then Zion Puckett was going to, help me, Austin. I didn't write it down.
New York
Jets. Jets. By the way, good luck to you Jets fans. I feel like something bad is just going to happen again. I'm not wishing it. I'm knocking on wood for you, but maybe Zion can make the team and be the one that helps be a lucky charm or something like that. Any of these guys that you want to give a shout out to or talk about for a second about, they didn't get drafted, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to have a great career.
Well, and I always think, I'm never going to be in this position, obviously, to be drafted or have my choice of where I want to go. But I always think toward the end of the draft, I'm like, would you rather just now that you get drafted and you can say I was drafted, but
right
now that you're closer to the end, right after we always see these guys start saying, okay, I'm going to training camp or I've been invited to the practice squad for this team. You get to have your choice though. And so I always wonder, if you're that late, which would you decide? So I think it's cool that these guys, if they got multiple offers, they got to choose where they wanted to go and what city they want to move to. But I do think, and you mentioned this pre-show, so I'm kind of piggybacking off of you. I think it's cool Mosiah got picked up by San Francisco. That's a really smart organization. It's had a lot of success over the last decade. And he didn't get to play a whole lot this year due to injury. So they obviously see something in him. And I think he'll be able to hopefully take advantage of the opportunity he's been given.
Yeah, I think that's a good one just to keep in mind. Love to see people overcome adversity and get the opportunities and make the most of it. So we're going to be hoping that for him. I'll give a shout to Cam Stutz, one of those offensive linemen that's been around for a while in a very turbulent time for offensive linemen for Auburn and has been probably one of the best mainstays of consistency. He's gotten shout outs from several coaches and coaching staffs and leaders and in a variety of roles there. He's had a lot of offensive. He's probably had, thinking back now, was he here when Malzahn was here?
I don't know, man.
I think so.
I feel like Cam Stutz has been here forever.
So he's probably had a minimum of 4 offensive line coaches.
At least.
At least, and then maybe 3 head coaches. So a guy that's transitioned over through turmoil and now is getting his opportunity to go out there and show he's compete. So I just want to give him a little bit of a shout out. As final thoughts on this, we could talk about the bow angle of this. Maybe we talk about that save that for another day, because I think that's like maybe we could hash it out for a second.
He's wearing the good colors again. That's all we need to say.
That's all we need to know. Back in the orange and blue. I would prefer him in the Chicago Bears orange and blue because that's closer to Auburn shade. But hey, we'll take what we can get at this point.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm just being picky. The perception around Auburn, and you saw several people talk about this in the media, about if this speaks a lot to the state of Auburn's program. And I hate, it's a true take. I hate that we have to say that too, because we're almost taking a little bit away from the guys that are trying to celebrate this.
Right.
But it is a reality, right? Let's not ignore that nobody's drafted below the 5th round for Auburn this year, or the 3rd day of the draft. It does speak to what's happening in terms of quantity, in terms of where they're going. It's hard to ignore.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, when you look at it, that is not something Auburn should be used to. It's not really something that the caliber of Auburn, the caliber of guys Auburn can recruit and develop should be the case. You should have guys, if you're at a place like Auburn, you should have guys that are at least going on Friday in those 2nd to 4th rounds. I think that has nothing to do with how hard these guys have worked on the roster now, on the roster in the past, or the guys that have just been drafted. But it has been a very turbulent time in the last 3, 4, 5 seasons that has caused a lot of dysfunction on the roster and guys moving around and guys all. I think you can look at the fact that the places that have the most guys drafted have the most consistency in terms of coaching staff and a parallel of their success being just consistent, not necessarily being elite, but being consistent. Auburn has not had that in the last, 6 to 8 years. And so I think that's hopefully something the Hugh Freeze era is going to change. I think it will. I think that we're already seeing that, identity and culture being set up in recruiting and being on the field. I think that's another part of this, though, is you have to look at this and see, and like you said, nothing taken away from the guys that were drafted. They contributed to Auburn and they're going to get their chance to go to the pros. But they didn't have anybody drafted until the 5th round, and they had Alabama on the ropes. They played Georgia hard. So I think you have to look at that and think that Auburn's on the right trajectory here. Now, yes, is that a moral victory? Sure is. But look where Auburn's been. You have to feel good about how year 1 went when you look at the kind of guys that the pros evaluate. If that's how we're going to evaluate a program, then I feel pretty good knowing that's our baseline.
Yep, exactly. It's a good way to kind of wrap up all those thoughts. But the main thing that we want to take away from this segment is congratulations to our Auburn men who are now getting their chance, whether you were drafted, free agent deal, or you're getting a shot at the minicamp. We are extremely proud of you and are excited that your stories continue on, and that maybe we'll be talking about you in the Super Bowl down the line.